Welcome to Pillars of Leadership podcast. I'm Doug Hagedorn. Today I have probably the most special guest I've ever had, Linda Russell, and her title is Retired. Is that right?
Exactly. And I worked hard for it.
You you did earn that. How long were you in the corporate rat
Oh,
race?
close to 40 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I must be I'm up to 37 now. So it's when I say that I about choke and go, really? It was that long. So what just tell us a little bit about your background and where you were raised and not quite into the corporate journey yet, but just a little bit about you and your background.
Well, I grew up in West Texas on a 20,000 acre ranch, cattle ranch, out in the middle of nowhere. So, very small blue collar town and school, and no professional influences in my career, when I was growing up. And my parents used to tell me that it was very empowering. Oh, women should be a school teacher. You could, when you grow up, you can get married, teach school, and support your husband, and you'll be off in the summer. And so it never occurred to me not to go to college, but school teacher was the only thing I knew. So I got a degree in business with teacher certification, and I taught high school 1 year, and that was enough for me. And so I went to work for Texas Instruments and basically in an hourly job,
Okay.
and worked my way up through the corporate world and got promoted to exempt. And uh, the TI was a really good company at empowering and developing their employees and training. So it was a really good place to learn.
Yeah. And so that was and so then later on you went back and got a master's?
Well, TI paid, well, they would pay for your master's degree. I was in Lubbock, Texas, in the consumer products. So we made speak and spell, touch and tell, all of the
Oh my
calculators.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they paid to fly. Actually, Houston Baptist. There was an Air Force base in Lubbock, and they flew professors. The Air Force Base flew professors up on the weekends to teach their pilots. And so TI worked with the Air Force Base to send employees to their classes.
So did you meet like in a Dairy Queen or where
No,
did
no, actually at the Air Force Base.
Okay. You made
Yeah.
it sound like you guys were so rural. They flew people in and
No, no, no. I grew up in West Texas.
okay.
Lubbock is more at West Tech, out by Midland, Odessa, Abilene,
Okay.
in that area.
Uh,
Yeah.
why did you choose what was your profession and why did you choose it? I guess you said you started off factory or hourly or
Yes. Actually, production control. And so when we were doing the speak and spells, it was high volume, and it was 3 shifts of factory work, working with factories in 2 or 3 different locations. And this was before computers. So we used universal planning forms to manage all our inventory, and once once a month inventory reports, and then we would every day calculate how many tens of thousands of systems we shipped out, and kind of do a running inventory with our lead times. And we were really well familiar with universal planning forms. You don't
I
appreciate
I
Excel
remember
spreadsheets and computers
yeah, that
until you
manual one page do it all planning spreadsheet. And I think it was brown, yellow or brown Texas Instruments color, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And we used a lot of pencils.
Yeah, and we migrated to typewriters, dot matrix printers. And I remember even maybe it was before working for you. I think it was Bill Lapp and Terry Cottier. I remember people were smoking cigars in their offices, right? And
Oh yes, I had a guy next to me that smoked. in Dallas when I moved to Dallas. And oh yeah, he and I used to go at it all the time about his smoking. Oh yeah, this was way before political correctness. My one job interview, the guy interviewing me asked me, "You're not going to get pregnant and quit, are you?" So
Well, thanks for asking.
yes,
Yeah, things have changed. And
yes, they have.
so you were one of the few, and I was too, dedicated, loyal, 40 years to the same company. And actually there was a merger and acquisition that took place. And how did you adjust? Do you remember, was there an adjustment in cultures and how you as a leader changed when after 20 years in your career you had a new company buy you out and things changed, I'm sure.
Oh, it was very impressive that there were four companies that we merged. So we had teams of people with representatives in similar jobs from all four companies. And it was very stark, the difference of how people acted in teams based on their company culture. The Hughes people and the TI people, their companies were much more empowering. And so we were all jumping over each other trying to be in charge. And the Raytheon people, which was a command and control company, they were very Boston banker. They were like, you can't do that. You have to ask somebody, and we were always taught, you just press on till somebody tells you to stop. And
Empowerment.
yeah, that
Yeah.
I had $1 million signature authority, and my counterpart at Raytheon had $1. It was just quite impressive, the difference of corporate cultures and how, and there were really no TI and Raytheon and E-Systems for sure did not have a lot of women in professional jobs. And so you didn't really have, as a woman in that culture, a lot of role models, but Hughes had a lot of more women in that level. And so that was very helpful to me. I met a lot of really good women in leadership that, when all you work around are men leaders, that's
Yeah.
kind of what you see. And so that was very educational for me.
Yeah, I remember the transition with those merger teams that we were going through. And I was gifted by the my Raytheon leader, Northeast Raytheon leader. He handed me a book, and the title of the book was not empowering or followership or servant leadership. It was called A Whack Upside the Head.
Oh,
It was,
yeah.
and that was this particular leader's chosen leadership style, and he was pretty good at it. But that
Oh,
that was a different culture, and I kept that book. I never read it, but I did
uh-huh.
keep it.
Well, it was a culture shock for us from TI going to such an empowering company to a cash is king, and everybody else get out of the way. So
Yeah,
that was quite an eye opener for us, and it was difficult
yeah.
transition.
But you were, I mean, it was groundbreaking back at this time. This is 80s, 90s when you were a female empowered leader. And so the leadership teams at that time, I mean, I don't know if you recall, but you were one of just a handful of women in leadership, right?
But pretty much my whole career, even at, well, just about every location in every place was mostly men. And working for a defense contractor, it's a lot of retired military officers, which are also mostly men. So yeah, that was um, interesting culture always.
So
So you
what do
had
you attribute your success to? I mean, it wasn't your hairstyle then. I mean,
no, probably my growing up on a ranch with all men and working cattle and all our neighbors, and we worked cattle, and it was, I was participated in team sports and ran rodeos and raised and showed cattle and sheep and quarter horses. So mostly guys do that, not a lot of, at that time, a lot. So I mostly, and all my neighbors when I was growing up, they were all boys. And so
Okay.
I didn't really work with a lot of women. So I was adaptable.
Yeah, you were, and you had this unique way about you, and we'll talk about servant leadership and those things here in a second, but you had this unique way about being commanding and results driven and yet still caring. And you were one of the few, I say this, that I can count it on two fingers or maybe one. You're one of the few leaders that I had that I would actually look forward to going to work and working for you. And
Oh,
that's
that's sweet. That's
pretty,
very nice. That's a big compliment because I like people and I like helping people. I like seeing people succeed. That gives me joy.
you
And
had many, if you went back and counted, and you should probably do it sometime, you had many people, dozens that worked for you or promoted into executive director and vice president positions. And so a lot of that was due to your leadership. And so I want to say thank you for that. And it was
well,
key.
I think good leaders develop other leaders, not followers.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in not always easy to do if you're, you're balancing. Maybe I wasn't so career driven so much as just task oriented
Mhm.
and get things done. And that gave me joy, not promotions. And so seeing other people get promoted gave me joy. And I wasn't jealous that somebody was trying to take my job. I had enough confidence in what I did that seeing other people succeed did not intimidate me.
It was very
It
obvious.
made me happy.
Yeah, your joy came through, and it was genuine and much appreciated. But you finished as a senior director executive in a big Fortune 50 company, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Facilities and real estate that I was managing when I retired.
And the thing about, so you didn't aspire to be an executive or to get those promotions throughout your career?
No,
Huh.
and they tell you should have this big career path and career plan. And, um, just, I don't, other than my faith and my just willingness to work, I didn't have a big long-term career plan. It just, things happened. And I just grew up with you work hard, you get rewarded. And that was, um, I worked hard. I worked a lot of hours and I did work hard. So,
And you
and
followed,
then the rest of it, I just left up to God.
yeah, your faith was, this is a fond memory for me. And I don't have many memories because my memory's poor, period. Whether it's a good memory or bad memory, I just don't remember. That's why I take pictures and ask my wife. But I recall sitting in a conference room with you many a time having a leadership team meeting. You'd buy lunch. We would talk about family. We would talk about sports. We would talk about not what you wanted to talk about. You would ask us questions about us and what was going on with our kids at school or our sports team or our hobbies. And so I don't remember all the specifics of those discussions, but I just remember that culture that you created.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's because I like people. I'm interested in people and what's happening in their lives. And that's probably one of the things I had the most sleepless nights over being a professional was maybe I learned too much about people. And so I take all their problems home with me at night, and worrying about what's happening with them. And sometimes that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can become a burden that you carry, but people see that and your team saw that and people loved working for you. We were allowed to laugh. We were allowed to make mistakes. We could have fun and yet still get things done. You had a great sense of humor.
We made some good videos and birthday videos and parties, and we did make work fun.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have to be work. It can be fun as long as you get the results.
yeah, yeah. So
And as
that
long as you have, what was it? We always talked about SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, I can't remember, trackable,
relatable.
achievable.
Yeah,
As long as you were meeting your goals and your numbers and your objectives, then why can't you enjoy it? Figure out how to make it fun. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. The other thing that was probably etched in my memory even greater than that was two incidents regarding your faith. And I want to talk about that because people Christians and maybe other practicing religions too are fearful about um, showing too many cards as far as their faith goes, or not being bold because they've seen people be bold and hit people over the head with the Bible, and that was never your style. But I remember you before eating in our team meetings. Here you are, an executive, and you folded your hands and prayed before you ate. Is Was this purposeful throughout your career? Was there fear? What in the world was going on?
I never had fear about my faith and my religion, and um, I never got the sense that the company um, that it mattered, that people cared that I was doing that, and didn't want me to. So I just grew up uh, in the church, and so it was part of who I am and who I was and who I still am. So that's part of me,
Mhm.
and that it's the whole package. So you either get the whole package or you don't. So my faith, you get me, you get my faith, is all part of it.
Well, it was very magnetic, so it was not an arm twisting. It wasn't, everybody stand with me and let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. It was not verbose, but at the same time, you were not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and you were at the time relatively bold, and I'm not sure it would have survived the latest
In
decade.
this environment. It's been a long time and lots of change, but yeah, I'm a more of a um, let people see your faith, not necessarily hear your faith. So I think you walk your faith, and as opposed to preaching your faith. I'm not good at that, but I did have a staff meeting with my facility managers once, talking about the plank in your eye versus the splinter in your brother's eye. We had a long discussion about that one day.
You got
Because they
into
were all,
you didn't get any into the parable discussions or
oh yes, we had that because they were all at each other over something. I don't remember now what it was, but so we had that little just come to Jesus meeting about, and so, who's got better parables than our Bibles? So yeah, there's some
yeah.
great lessons can be learned. And they're like they say, there's no new sins. We haven't
Right.
invented anything new. So there's something in there for everybody.
Well, you were truly the only Bible that many people would read. And so, we spent the most time not with our spouses, but in our workplace. And so whether it's education or workplace, there's a place for believers to live that out. And sometimes you have to be purposeful and strategic and even plan how you do it. And sometimes,
Yeah.
like you said, it's just being me. I've just decided I'm going to be me. And if people don't like it, and allowing people the freedom to be themselves too, as you always did that.
Yeah. That and I don't know how you do it any other way. In the current culture, maybe you still you don't talk about it, but you live it, and people see that. Whether you believe it or not, people see.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm focusing a lot on servant leadership. And it's funny when I texted you to see if you'd be willing to do this, you weren't familiar with even the topic servant leadership,
I
right?
never heard of nope, never heard of. I had to look it up. I mean, I
Well,
could have kind of guessed, but
yeah.
oh, very, very interesting. And I was you that was such a nice compliment. I can't think of anything nicer than that. It was very, very nice.
Well, you were truly a servant leader and didn't even know it. You weren't washing our
No.
feet necessarily, but you were serving us. And you look at some of the traits here, you were caring for us, you were nurturing, you cared about our interests. You prioritized our needs, whether it was what we wanted to eat, or like you said, when you had to go through a layoff or promotion process, it hurt your heart when you had to do things
Oh,
you
geez. Yeah.
had to get done, but you showed appreciation. And so those were just some examples that I put of this is based on the research in the bottom left-hand corner here. This isn't just me making a list of what servant leadership is. This is the experts going back half a century. Robert Greenleaf wrote the first book on servant leadership. Of course, Jesus knew something about servant
Yeah.
leadership. And so he had quite a bit to say about it, but like you said, it was living it out, not preaching it. Is the Sermon on the Mount is great when you look at Matthew 5 through 7, but he washed feet
He
and
washed the feet of his disciples.
even the one who was getting ready to crucify him, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So you served us, you empowered us, you delegated, you focused on learning and talent development, and you involved us early and didn't just slap a vision down on a piece of paper and say, "This is what we're doing." You asked us our opinions.
Yeah.
And no, that was important. You were a true role model.
Well, it's respect for people and respect for their opinions and what what their opinions are based on. And you can't not know the person in their family life and then not appreciate their opinions and where they're coming from
Mhm.
and what's driving their visions. So those are all part of developing leaders and understanding good leaders and making sure that people are all supporting the vision.
Yeah, and I think this our category of relationship building is what was your one of your greatest strengths is you just did this automatically, like you mentioned trust and respect. And you may not always get consensus, but you got us together. You listened to all the voices. We agreed to walk out of the room in unity, even though we didn't agree on everything. And so it came out with, we learned how to listen actively just by watching you do it for years.
Cute. Well, and Doug, it's don't want to think it just happens. No, we had some great training
Mhm.
through TI and especially TI. We had some great leadership training. We had they sent all the women off for a week all the higher level women off for a week to a leadership class. And the men, when we came home back from that, the men were like, "So, how was Chicks in Charge?" So it was quite interesting because the men were so intimidated and all the women were off learning something that they didn't know what was going on. But that, and then they
I didn't
spent some,
say that, did I?
No, no, you didn't.
Okay.
But understanding personalities, Myers-Briggs was always something that
Mhm.
sticks in my mind, that we spent some time developing and understanding our own personality, and how each of those, how that personality impacts others. Like, I'm an extrovert, and I had a boss that was a total introvert, and you look at the two personalities and you see how that drives each other crazy, so you have to learn. And so there's lots of training too that goes into developing that.
But as a leader, that's got to be you committed to it because you're having a budget that goes along with that. You're having time away from the job. And most we had you and I had the privilege in a big Fortune 500 company to have a learning organization and learning offsites and trainings, and small businesses and startup companies don't have that luxury. And so,
No.
you still have to make the learning a priority, even as a leader with small companies, because you have to develop and train and teach your leaders and be creative about how to do that. But it's
Yeah,
very
your most valuable resource in my mind was the employees. And you, as you develop employees and you manage turnover, you see what a valuable resource having long-term employees that are trained, as opposed to having to always replace somebody and retrain. So
yes.
if you don't appreciate that and develop them as, and treat their employees as the resource that they are and the value that they bring, as opposed to just having somebody manage turnover and training, it's so draining to an organization. So it needs to be a priority.
That's a great point. And I know, in the couple of organizations I've been in who don't have massive training budgets or organizations, you had to develop it yourself. And like you said, the best way to do that, you can outsource it and go buy it, which is great because that's what I'm doing right now. But I think that using your own employees as the subject matter experts to go develop that material, if they have that, is a great way to do that. So then you have the buy-in, but you also have the subject matter experts within the organization. So you're right, that training and talent's important.
Right. And like you said, with the listening, because who knows better how things can be done better than the people that are actually doing the work. And
Right.
if you don't have a way or a process to ask them and develop that feedback, fix it process, that's also important.
Yeah. And you mentioned, some other good learning tools. I went through the Emergenetics profile, which is another very good tool. And then Kouzes and Posner have a leadership practices inventory, and you can do that one online. It's called the LPI for $8. And it's really a good one and looks at 5 different areas of leadership. And one of those is vision. And they call that out as one of the key 5 areas is shared vision. The research shows that if a leader does just tops down, hands out a vision, and there's not buy-in, there's no reciprocity, there's no symbiotic win-win relationship, it doesn't work. And it's
Right.
short-lived and it's just another fad. If you have shared vision and you're collaborating with the stakeholders and with the followers, that makes for a powerful vision that people are bought in and they'll actually know what the vision is instead of just filing it as a PowerPoint.
Yeah, another corporate ham down thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Another program, right? Another
Yeah.
act to learn. Yeah. So yeah, this regular communication, this vision, being a courageous decision maker. Here's one, and you were always good at this too, is admitting when you made a mistake, taking ownership, going to bat for your people. You gave us credit, Linda. You didn't take the credit for yourself, and people knew that you were the leader. that you inspired us, that you influenced us. But I always appreciated that about you, is you gave credit where credit was due.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was a constant battle on my part to make sure that my employees got the recognition and the raises that they deserved. And
You
so that was, behind the scenes struggles, because, you don't only negotiate down, you have to negotiate up with your bosses. And so if you're not effective at negotiating up, then your employees suffer. So it's a double-edged sword.
you were constantly going to battle for your employees, whether it was raises, promotions, just recognition for a project success, because that environment we were in, we were not in a function that was recognized. I mean, engineering
Right.
is making all the advancements, marketing and BD is making the money, finance is tracking the money. And so you had to constantly claw and fight and scratch. And we so appreciated that. We knew you did that. Your fingernails came back bloodied sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think supply chain emerged later as the recognition that it and professional um, career that it deserved. But I think initially most operations companies didn't appreciate the value of negotiations and pricing of material. When your things are 80% content is material, you would think you would need to focus on that a little
Yeah,
bit and hire the
exactly.
right kind of people to manage it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I went to Michigan State, there were only 5 schools in the country that had a supply chain degree. Now there are over
Right.
200. Yeah, absolutely. This last section, empathy, again, was I don't know if this came out of your faith or extended from your faith, this empathy. This whole empathy it seemed like an extension of your faith. You were humble, authentic, you built others up, and we had our moments where we had to be results oriented, but you never tore us down and made me go home dreading coming back the next day. You were very quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry, and those are all biblical principles.
Well, I'm going to request a promotion.
For yourself or for me?
For me, I'm going to tell Bill I need to get a raise. Thank you.
Yeah, he's going to say, "Oh my gosh, you got so many
Oh,
comments
he's
now."
not going to be able to stand me after this
Yeah.
call. This is
Bill, if
so.
you watch this, Bill, I'm apologizing. I've ruined your marriage for a month. Sorry. All right. I never thanked her when I was on the job, so I gotta
Okay.
lost time. But as you go through a career of 37 years, sometimes you don't know what you got. You don't
Exactly. You don't appreciate it at the time.
you don't.
That's for
School
sure.
teachers go through it all the time. They never get thanked. They don't. The
Yeah.
student doesn't realize this is the best teacher I have right now until 20 years later.
Yeah. Then you get out in the real world and you see the results.
Well, it tears you down. A lot of times, as leaders, we get torn down and not built up, and so people need that. And did you have a leader, if you look back in your history, that was one that built you up and edified you and supported you and went to battle for you?
I did. I had a couple. And probably my toughest boss, Mercedes Ruder. I don't know if you knew her,
Yeah.
but yeah, the one woman, I think maybe I only worked for one woman my whole career. But yeah, she was harder on me. I think she was harder on women because she wanted us to succeed, because she succeeded where mostly it was men. So probably she was one of my biggest cheerleaders.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that a lot of your leadership came naturally, and yes, you can attribute it to the training, but leaders are made and they're not born. So leaders are made, not born, and you had a mixture of both, I think. And but I do this middle section. I debated on this servant leader acrostic whether I should put this in there or not. And because for me it's an aspiration, but it's also a commitment. There's some things to do in the middle here practically on and I saw some of this come out, and you mentioned your faith, but do any of those resonate with you?
Um, I think seeking God's guidance and praying for the leaders of our country, our church, our um, I'm not real good at scheduling time with God. We have our talks every morning, and I like to talk with God like He's sitting in the chair across from me each morning. So
Yep.
that helps me, like God's sitting there and we're talking about our day and our plans and our concerns. So I do that. And I think that this helps me. I in my church, my husband and I are members of Prestonwood Baptist, and we are in a Bible study fellowship class of a couple of hundred people, and we're shepherd group leaders. And then I also am a master gardener, and I manage community herb gardens with a bunch of teams of people, and I have a care group. The shepherd group is our care group. We divide our classes down to smaller groups so you can minister to people when they have needs, and so these type of skills are not just for your
Mm,
work but for your life after work, or
yes.
setting aside time with your family and leading your family. I just think these are something that you live your life by.
You'll probably, I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but I remember we were going through training and learning about Six Sigma, and we were learning about lean and Kaizen blitzes, and it all made my head spin. And to
I
be
know.
and I didn't really like it, but I knew I had to do it. But we went through an exercise where we had these crazy dots and post-it notes where we put it on the wall. And you taught us how to do that. And we went through training to do it as well. And it's really, looking back, it's really not that hard. You just pick a problem and then you go through a solution process. And I remember doing that with you, and then you challenging us to say, how can you use your leadership skills? Some of them taught, some of them bought, some of them born, some of them learned. How can you use that for kingdom purposes? And that really stuck with me. And you just said it again, is how can you use those skills um, for God's work?
Exactly. Go
And
ye therefore and make disciples.
yes, and I don't know if you remember this, but I went and used those skills for a church building program. It was called Rise Up and Build, and we were having a building fund. And so I put together a whole offsite using this dot procedure, using this
Oh,
tool
no kidding.
and, and skill set and sprints. And I went and did that. And we raised almost $250,000. And I won't pat myself on the back, but I will.
Uh-huh.
You played a part, and I played a small part too in the kingdom for a little church in Frisco, Texas, out of this leadership process and things that we learned for kingdom business.
That's awesome.
And you know, the other
Well,
thing that struck me, go ahead.
now that you mention it, the church we went to in Oklahoma, the sanctuary, it's seated about 200 people, I guess. It was built in the fifth or redecorated in 1950s. Well, it still had the orange carpet and the orange. I mean, I led a team of people from our church to redesign and relay out and redecorate that whole sanctuary. And it because when you have a whole bunch of whole congregation of everybody has their opinion how that church should look, you had to manage not just your team, but the entire congregation and the pastor.
Yes.
So these skills come in handy for all kinds of leadership roles.
Yeah. And and people who think they're, they've reached halftime, as Bob Buford says, or they're in the final third or in the final sprints of the marathon, when they think they can't be used for God, or they have no nothing to add to society, is wrong. And
Right.
just sometimes you have to figure out creatively how to do that, and you have to ask, and you have to volunteer, and you have to get involved. But look at your leadership ministry is just beginning.
Exactly. We're not retiring, we're just rewiring.
Rewiring, exactly. Well, I'm so grateful, Linda, for how you helped to rewire me and to help influence me and a whole slew of others that don't get the chance to thank you, and just the impact that you had both in the marketplace, in the corporate world, and in the ministry in God's kingdom. How that's those seeds that were planted um, will flourish and have flourished, and you don't even know it all. You'll get to hear "Well done, good and faithful servant" someday, and that will be so much better than a podcast here.
Thank you, Doug. That is just very sweet. I appreciate that. You don't realize. So I'm really flabbergasted, but thank you. Appreciate it.
I
And
appreciate you.
you made my job easier. It wasn't easy, but employees like you guys, you and Loretta, I just remember lots of really good people made worth fun coming to work and made the work successful.
Yep, exactly. It takes a team for sure. So thank you, Linda. I appreciate you, and thanks again for everything. And I love you, miss you.
Okay, good. It's good to see you, Doug.
Take care.